back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft podcast. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson, and joining me again in the booth is the man primarily made of moss, Nathan Mossman. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Excellent. We're going to discuss TNT, or Team Naming Thursday, and our recommendations for going into your playoffs or heading a little bit closer into the crunch time. Look at some fixtures. Look at some teams and then some players on those teams and potentially look at who may be available on the waiver wire, and if not waiver wire, then some via the trades. Firstly, though, we reached out to our listeners this morning. We posed the Thursday morning question of what shall we ask Mossman. Apologies, we can't read them all. We've got to pick one. There was lots of them, very, very amusing ones. But we've picked one, and this one comes from Ed Pye. He wants to know, in the theme of Game of Thrones starting back up, who would be in your Game of Thrones 15?
Yeah, there were some really great questions, and this was an awesome one. I feel like this deserves a podcast all of its own.
I thought the same thing, literally thought the same. I started getting into it.
Yeah, you could spend a long time, I think, going through this.
Yeah.
I think this could be an ongoing thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm going to, do this justice in the limited time. But I did think if I was going to pick a loose forward trio, you've got to have the Hound, the Mountain, and I think Khal Drogo coming off the back of the scrum would be quite an imposing sight.
It's interesting. Let me stop you right there, because I had Khal Drogo as my 7. I mean, he's going to be ferocious over the ball. You're not going to be able to stop him.
Yeah, I thought, the Hound, though, he's the fetcher.
Yeah, see, I put the Hound, Hordor, and the Mountain in the second row. I thought they were just too big. There's no way that you're getting any line-out ball off them, and they've just got power in the Brad Thorne type of way. Yeah,
no, that's fair. That's fair. I think that's my starting, my initial thoughts. I actually thought, I was thinking of the coaching lineup, and obviously in the All Blacks we have the 3 wise men. I thought with head coach of Tywin Lannister, and I would have put Lord Varys and Lord Baelish as the other 2. They'd constantly be plotting and scheming to get away with things for the opposition, and the press conferences would be interesting too.
Yeah, so at my number 8, I had Ned Stark and captain. I just figured everyone would follow him. Leads by example. Loses his head every now and again, but yeah, he leads by example. I had Joffrey as my halfback. I mean, there's nothing needs to be said about that. I mean, it's just a pain in the ass. He's always mousing off, abusing everybody, getting over everyone's skin, and then he hides behind his forwards when the going gets tough. Who did you have at fly half? I had a couple of options at fly half. Actually, I had 3 options.
So I actually went for Jorah at fly half. He just struck me as just a calm head. Someone who'd be good at organising. There's something Peter Grant about him to me. He's just a real journeyman, like almost literally.
Yeah, So for my fly halves, I thought Littlefinger would probably be a possibility at 10, just because he's always scheming and pulling strings. Tyrion is for the same reason. He's always got fingers in a lot of pies and scheming. But a little bit of a change of tact. I went for Bran at 10 as well, just because of his vision. You can see the field, you can see other things that a lot of other people can't see. But this is a little bit dependent on whether Hordor starts at lock, because he might struggle without the use of his legs playing fly half. Where did you put Khaleesi?
Well, you need your strike weapons out wide, and there's no doubt she can pretty much strike from anywhere.
Well, I didn't actually have her starting, but she has to be in the squad, so I put her on the bench just because she's probably the only one that can control the Dragons, and I figured they'd be pretty good on either wing. Pretty solid under the high ball, pretty fearless. Now, look, it's going to be a little bit tricky. They've got raw talent. It's going to be a little bit tricky to coach, but they say good coaches coach players, and I think if they kind of had her there, just being that kind of steady hand, that you get good things out of those guys.
See, I wanted to put Jaime Lannister at fullback because he's sort of a safe pair of hands, but of course he's no longer a pair of hands at all. But there is something kind of Percy Montgomery about him. Jaime Lannister would not be out of place in a South African rugby lineup. He just has that look about him, doesn't he?
He does, absolutely.
He'd be playing for the Sharks for sure.
I had him at 6 just because he didn't do much ball carrying. Just get around the paddock. And I put Jon Snow in the front row, and the reason I did that is because, props, hookers, they get a little bit of a knock. They get a little bit of a hard time for not being the smartest tool in the tool set. So apparently Jon Snow knows nothing. So I figured he would go up the front as well.
Well, just to pull you up on a comment there, if you're talking about someone who doesn't do a lot of ball carrying, it's got to be Dion Greyjoy, doesn't it?
Touche. And that's a nice segue, actually, because he was running around doing a little promotion with all the Super Rugby teams in the last couple of months, trying to strum up some Game of Thrones. So we should probably get on to... Thanks for that, Ed. As we say, this is probably a podcast for the off-season that we launch into. Did you see that the privileges of being the president of the USA?
I can imagine there are quite a few of them, especially if you're Bill Clinton.
So another one, aside from that, is that he got to see the first episode of Game of Thrones before anybody else. So he called up the Game of Thrones producers and producer I think it was actually, and said, a big Game of Thrones fan, do you mind if I get a look? Which I thought was a little bit brash, but
yeah,
you know,
that's cool though.
It is cool.
Yeah.
So the guy, the producer, was like, well, "What do you say when the leader of the free world calls you up and says, 'Can I watch your show early?'"
Yeah, for sure.
You say, "How high?"
Yeah. So the only just to wrap that up, the only other position I just thought it's a squad game these days, and the guy that you want on the bench is Jackin Hagar. Because a man can play a lot of positions. He's the ultimate utility.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ed. You've just ruined the first 25 minutes of the podcast. Brilliant. All right, let's crack into Team Naming Thursday.
And boom goes the dynamite.
So first up, the Highlanders and Sharks. They're on Friday night. We had a little bit. We did wonder in the bye week whether there might be a few harsh words told by Jamie Joseph, and it seems one of those was for Rob Thompson. So Jason Emery comes in this week for him. Bender comes back at 15, and Matt Faddis and Jack Wilson on the wing. The Jack Wilson one's a little bit of a surprise with Patrick Osborne. What do you make of that?
I didn't think Patrick Osborne was playing badly, so it strikes me as a rest.
Yep, 100%. He was actually probably the only one that seemed to be playing okay. I mean, Asopawanga played okay in the second half, but no, I don't think this is one. I definitely think this is resting. Looking at the Sharks, looking at tougher games to come. For the Sharks, though, so we always thought that this would be a tough tour for Joe Peterson, and we recommended getting him out of your lineup and potentially trying to trade away. Because of Patrick Lambie coming up and playing on tour as well. But it seems now he's got Garth April to contend with as well. Is this just Gary Gold trying to see what he's got in a young guy and almost not necessarily throwing this season in, but looking ahead?
Well, it's almost the beginning of the end, I think, of the Joe Pye reign.
Could be. Could well be.
I mean, if you're depending on him as your number one, this week is a big wake-up call, and now's the time to start making alternative arrangements because, it's not going to last long.
No, it's a concern. Keegan Daniel playing 7. He's always played quite well when he gets a decent run of the team. And Philip van der Walt, he makes it in. There's a bit of a knock over the week last week, but he makes it in the team. I guess one of the news we hadn't really covered on the last pod on Monday was the news about Naholo. Have you got an update for us?
Yeah, so apparently he's a couple of weeks behind where they thought he would be. So I think originally they had targeted this game, but they said he's at least another 2 to 3 weeks away.
And do you think that Fijian doctor's just sitting there sending his business card across to the Highlanders saying, "See, I told you so, you should have been able to release him back to Fiji"?
Yeah, I'm sure he's trying to drum up some business there. Yeah, I think calling him a doctor might be
true.
Giving him a little bit too much credit, but sure.
Yeah, doctor of hard knocks. Yeah. All right. What else do you make from this game? What do you make of this game?
I think the Highlanders. I think generally teams coming off bye have time to prepare for these matches. Mm-hmm. So they would have, as you said, had some harsh words, would have kind of gone back to the drawing board at training. And a game like this, I think, is kind of ideal for them in some way because they'll sort of look at it and they'll be able to game plan for the way the Sharks play, which is a very specific kind of way. And I kind of expect the Highlanders to come out firing here. Just some of the things that they were saying from the coaches, they just were critical of the attitude right from the beginning. Said they started slow and never really recovered, and I just think they'll come fizzing in this game.
Squire, Dixon, Christie, all good plays. Dixon over Squire or Squire over Dixon?
I'll go Dixon just.
Okay. That's fair. Yep. Okay, let's move on to Rebels Cheetahs then. Again, this is Friday night. It's good to see Jonah Placid back in 15. We touched on that on Monday. But the interesting move was bringing Reece Hodge into 13. How much scouting have you done at Reece Hodge at 13?
Very little. So it might be that my scouting is a similar realm to his experience in that position. We don't know really. No. But I don't think it's going to improve things for him.
No, we were pretty critical of his last couple of outings, and a lot of folks are asking, and I think they see the Cheetahs and they get a little bit excited about the matchup, and potentially there could be points in this game. And I think that's true, but I'm just not sure that you're going to get it through Reece Hodge. One of the main questions folks are going to ask is whether he's going to be kicking goals or not. If you had to plant your flag on the Debrashini or the Hodge, which way do you think you go?
I think I would go Debrashini. The impression I got was that it was injury related, that they took the kicking away from him. And therefore I'd kind of expect him to get it back. And it might be that Hodge has got enough on his mind playing in that position anyway. Yeah,
that's right. And so Stefan Arvalu's actually shifted across to the left wing, Crawford on the right. Inman missed it again. I don't think we mentioned this on the pod. He's out for, was it 4 weeks, Inman?
Yes. It sounded longish term anyway. The kind of, an injury at this stage of the season where you're not holding on to Inman anyway.
No, that's right. And bad news for Dom Shipley owners and Don Shipley himself. Out for the season.
Yep.
One thing to be aware of, and hopefully this happens between now and 7 o'clock on Friday night, is Tamati Ellison is expecting a baby in the next few days. Is imminent, as I understand. I'm not entirely sure where she's having the baby. Hopefully it is in Melbourne so that it's not too much disruption, but just something to be aware of if you are thinking of just plugging and playing Tamati and forgetting about checking just before game week lock. You should probably just have a little look. Cheetahs, not much change for the Cheetahs. They're going in with a fairly similar team to the one that they thumped the Sunwolves with. Should be an entertaining game, this, I think.
Yeah, I mean, assuming that the pitch is in some kind of condition, then I totally agree. I think there'll probably be some points for both sides. Interesting, of course, we've got Super Sefa marking Super Surge.
Right.
So that could be quite a contest, and it might be one of those things that'll just be tit for tat in terms of try scoring, and both of them could blow up. I mean, obviously we're not expecting the kind of production that you got last week, but definitely not a tick down this week for me on the Cheetahs. I'd sort of, if anything, it's maybe a slight up.
I think so as well, and non-derby match, Cheetahs away from home. I think there should be some points in this match. Anything else from this you want to bring up? Colby Finger.
Yeah, not bothered about that.
Okay.
At all.
I know a few folks have got Geordie Reid, and they are a little bit concerned that Colby Finger is coming back. There was a hubbub in the press around him coming back, so it suggests. I mean, last year he was their number one until he got injured. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so they're just wondering what they should do.
Yeah, funny that you say that, because Geordie Reid was somebody I was going to pick out as being a sneaky good play. Mm-hmm. He's done it 3 games in a row now. I think he's got into double figures. And he actually looks pretty handy. Now, chances are he's not somebody that you drafted high, and therefore you're not too bothered if he perhaps loses his place, because he's probably not one of your number 2. But while he's in that team, I think worth a start probably.
Yep, no, that's a good call. Okay. All right, let's move on to Sunwolves Juarez. Sunwolves had a little bit of a tinker where they brought in Tatakawa at 12 and Derek Carpenter shifted out one. And for the Jaguares, They've had fairly significant changes. Brought Ambrosino in, Moyano on the right wing, Tuchelet's still at 15. But they've still got the Hernandez, Iglesias, De La Fuente axis, and the loose forward trio, Matera, Leguizamon and Issa. How much of an uptick are you giving all of the Juarez and some of the Sunwolves for that matter, actually?
Well, based on what we've seen so far this season, you would think that kicking and defence would be optional in this game.
Yeah.
So, on the surface of it, should be an uptick. I mean, even poor old Juan Martin, I think I'm not saying he's going to do great things, but he's probably he might be like, he's not someone that I would personally start, but he might be somebody that if you've got him sitting on your bench, you might be able to dangle him out to somebody and say, hey, look at this guy who's going to be kicking against the Sunwolves. There's going to be big points in this. Do I actually think it'll pan out that way? I kind of don't, but right. I think other people might buy that.
Yeah, I'm a little. It's really hard because a lot of folks have asked us on social and about Juan Martin, and first of all, I guess whether he's going to be kicking, and then where does he fit in the midfield rankings? And it's really hard, having just watched him put in one of his worst performances of his career against the Crusaders, to then come out and say that he's going to do a Daniel Moraes type thing of last week and notch up the points and get all the conversions. But I'm slowly coming around, just like a good therapist. Towards the end of the week, you're showing signs of forgetting, like an opening batsman, I guess, just forgetting the last impression that he made on you, just focusing on the next ball and looking forward. I think he might go all right. Now, I assume you think he's going to be kicking goals?
I do.
Yeah, I think so as well. But yeah, there aren't too many buys this week, so you probably do have you are stacking him up against a few other players, but I think he's going to be a pretty good start. What about players like De La Fuente and Iglesias?
Yeah,
All right, so I've got a question here. So
okay.
Fred Glover on Twitter asks, Zas, Juan Martin Hernandez, or De La Fuente? So rank those three.
I think you still stick with Zas. Mm-hmm. There's not really any reason
playing
not
the Reds.
To. Yep. I think that's a good matchup. And then Juan Martin, just based on the goal kicking. I'm not crazy about Geronimo. Haven't been for a while.
Sure. Yeah. Look, let's. Okay, that was a fairly high ranking because we're talking about Zas here. There's another one here from Andrew H on Twitter. Geronimo, Carpenter, and don't mess with the Rohan. Van Rensburg from the Lions.
Yeah, that's a good question. All three of those are pretty close. I'm almost inclined to say Carpenter, just because he's actually been getting it done. Mm-hmm. And I guess the flip side to this being a good matchup for the Juarez is it's actually a pretty good matchup for the Sunwolves as well, so let's not forget that.
Yep.
That guys like Carpenter and PC, they're able to put up points even when they're getting a hiding. They'll probably be well in this game. Mm-hmm. So Carpenter, I think, will be okay. And then,
Lions Kings.
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to go for Van Rensburg. I think, despite the points, I think he's actually looked all right. And I'm just generally been kind of unimpressed with this revolving door midfield that the Juarez have been putting out.
Mm. No, I know. Look, I thought Geronimo actually looked okay against the Crusaders. I thought that was one of the players that actually played okay. Him and Iglesias turned out all right. So I went with him just because I've got the Sunwolves cheater game in my head and I just can't get it out at the moment. But I understand why you go Carpenter, because he has played and he's put up two good weeks now. And it's hard to ignore Rohan Van Rensburg against the Kings. So I actually went Geronimo, Rohan, and then Carpenter. So, Andrew, we haven't really helped you there.
Do you give just as an overall thing, do you give the Sunwolves a chance in this game?
Yes, I give them a chance. Yeah, I think they've got a chance. They play a lot better at home, and they like playing. And this one is in Tokyo, so I think they get up a little bit more with their hometown support. I think South Africa was a long way from home for them, and that was some of them travelling for the first time in a Super Rugby sense, so I think they're just trying to figure out how that works. So I do give them a better chance, and this is the last of the Haware's longest tour this season. So whether that's a negative or whether that's actually a positive, because they're just looking over the horizon to back to their own beds, not too sure. But I do give them a chance, absolutely. But either way, I think there's probably going to be points in this. I looked at the weather forecast just to figure out if that was going to be a contributing factor at all, and it's not. Friday's supposed to be 27 degrees and sunshine in Tokyo, and Saturday's a little bit cooler, but still sunny. All right, one last one from Fred Glover. Again, he asks this time around the loose forward trio. So Issa, Matera, Noche, and Whiteley. So rank those guys. And I think I've ranked them for me, and I think it's fairly telling where I'm at with this game.
So I'm guessing Mr. Whiteley's coming last.
Yeah, he is for me, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think you might be a bit higher on the Juarez than I am. I
really liked Issa last week. He looked really, really good. I loved how he played.
Yeah, I can understand that. I guess the flip side is playing the Kings is generally considered to be a pretty good thing as well.
It is.
I'll stick with Whiteley.
Okay. So you would still have Whiteley over Noche?
No.
Okay, no, that's cool.
So I'm just trying to work this out in my head, and now that I think about it, it's interesting because they're all reasonably good matchups as well.
That's right, the Reds as well.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. So I guess just if it's just on talent, or when I say talent, I mean from a fantasy point of view, I guess it's Noche. Mm-hmm. Whiteley's definitely the more dependable. Mm. Yeah, and I just finding it hard to split those guys, actually.
No, that's fair. No, that's okay. Either way, that you've gone away from what I thought I was going to do. I was going to go Issa, Matera, and then not Shea Whiteley.
Yeah. And
that just shows you how high I am on this game. And
sure.
I guess my little love affair of how well Issa played last week. All right, anything more from this game? Okay, Hurricanes, Chiefs. So I guess we'll start at where we usually start with the Hurricanes team. Matt Proctor at 13, Willis Halaholo on the bench, Vince Asa at 12, and Ngane Lamapi nowhere. What's your thoughts on that?
I still believe in Halaholo.
Okay, all right.
I know that's 2 weeks in a row now, but I just sort of think that the Canes are kind of tinkering a little bit. Maybe they haven't 100% decided on what their best team is. And there's a long way to go. We'll see how they go here. And they give the impression that they're picking teams for the opposition sometimes. So I guess they might look at it and think, well, they're two fairly robust characters in the centre of that Chiefs back line. Might want a couple of fairly solid defenders standing opposite them, and that might be where somebody like Arso actually gets the nod over Halaholo. I could actually understand that.
Sure. Yep. I'm all of a sudden feeling a little bit uncomfortable about Matt Proctor's ACL. Not too sure why, but yeah. What about Blade Thompson coming in for Fadilofa in the lock as well? You'd start Blade over Fadilofa, right?
Yeah.
There's only one other player you'd start over Blade Thompson.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. James Marshall making a return from the bench. Whose role is that 15 going forward, do you think?
I think history has shown probably over the last couple of seasons that Marshall, when he's fit, is the guy.
I know. I think so too.
That's why when I say last week, for instance, I actually traded Jason Woodward to somebody. I didn't consider him a big loss because I didn't think of him as a long-term prospect.
Yeah, it concerns me a little bit. He's played quite well there. I think he goes quite well for the Hurricanes at 15. Maybe it's that, I don't know, I hate saying it again, the twin pivot thing they talk about all the time, right, with James Marshall being able to split it with Bowden Barrett. Don't know.
Well, even last year, Jason Woodward had high-scoring games, but he did it sporadically when he was in the team.
Yep.
So obviously the coaches aren't looking at his fantasy output and thinking, oh, we'll keep him in there,
No,
which is
right.
disappointing.
Yeah, it is very disappointing. For the Chiefs, so James Lowe surprisingly was pulled out. You didn't hear anything about that all week, did you?
No, not at all. I mean, it sort of sounds almost similar to the Patrick Osborne thing, doesn't it, in some ways?
It does. It is an injury. It's a shoulder, apparently.
Well, that doesn't sound anything like the Patrick Osborne thing.
No, I guess not. But so the bit that I thought was quite amusing, on Wednesday there was an article about how his body was a temple on stuff, and about how, you know, he's so much more fitter this season, and it's showing dividends. You know, the rewards are coming through. And he must have been, it just shows you how much in the media that they don't know, because he must have known that he was injured at that point when he was having that interview. It's just crazy. Anyway.
So when he went to shake hands with the reporter and winced, he just didn't really pick up on it.
So what's that white thing that you've got your arm resting in? What is that? Nothing? What are you talking about?
Yeah. That's why we pay these guys the big money in New Zealand journalism.
That's right, exactly. All right, so Charlie Ngatai made it in 12. How nervous are you for him starting?
Not really.
Okay. If I gave you, and this is a question from Sam Kanoski, he asked rank Karevi, Naivalu, and Ngatai.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one of them good problems.
Yeah, it is one of them, isn't it? You have no doubts that I don't want to put you on the spot because it's ridiculous to say you wouldn't have any doubts that Ngatai wouldn't play, but you're fairly confident he will start?
I am, yeah. I'm going to go, I've got a good feeling about Super Sefa this week, so I'm going to go Sefa, Karevi, Ngatai.
Yeah, that's how I put it as well. Yep, that's exactly how I put it. And one of the main contributing factors for me was Red Stormers. So their defense is pretty strong, Stormers. They go all right there. I don't think there's going to be as much freedom as, say, the Highlanders were a little bit previous, and also the Bulls. Okay, Tony Pulu made the right wing.
Yeah.
No Sean Stevenson at all. Wasn't listed in the injured category. What do you make of that?
This is something that I guess we kind of predicted in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We just liked the look of Pulu and didn't fancy Stevenson so much. And I guess it's a case of he's got over his injury and he's straight back in, and that's just kind of the way it is.
Interesting name on the reserve bench, Fisaliti, the fish. He's on the bench.
He's returned from the Naivalu triangle.
He has. And somehow turned into a utility back.
That was the other thing that we predicted that we were completely wrong about. We said he would never be on the bench because he can't play any other position.
That's right. That's why I bring this up. I thought it was really odd.
Yeah.
I guess they've got Andrew Horrell on there as well. So he can pretty much play anywhere from 6 through 15. So I think if someone did go down in that fullback role, that he probably would go there, or there would be a little bit of a shift around. So if Mackenzie went down, or if Cruden went down and Mackenzie had to come in, I think that's probably the way that they go, and they wouldn't put the fish there. What do you expect from Sam McNichol in terms of fantasy rugby up against Corey Jane?
Corey Jane's generally a pretty good defender.
Yeah.
I can't help but feel that maybe things might not necessarily run McNichol's way quite so much. I mean, he's disappointed really in the only start that he's had. This is a difficult matchup, and an away game against the Canes. I wouldn't expect it to be super high scoring. So no, not crazy about McNichol.
How do you like Tamanavalu this week?
I like him quite a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's somebody that I think is quite dependable. I mean, he's always going to beat a few defenders just because that's the kind of player he is. If he gets the ball in his hands a few times, he'll do enough to make something of it. Mm-hmm. And I did read an article during the week that was talking about Anton Leonard-Brown, and it sounded like he's had a whole lot of problems with that knee.
He has, isn't he?
After coming back. I think infections. They were talking about the quality of the soil in Buenos Aires. That was a contributing factor. So obviously the dirt there just not as good as the dirt in the Waikato. I mean, I think that everybody knows Waikato has exceptionally good dirt. So that's been a problem for him, and it's really caused him quite a lot of setbacks.
We've got a question from James Kopke. Tuchelet over any of Bender, Pulu or Hodge?
Over Hodge, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said too. Bender and Pulu 1 and 2, and then Tuchelet 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything more from this match?
Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs, indeed. Axis of Evil. Force Waratahs. Not a hell of a lot of change for the Force. That just got named. The big change really, I guess, from a fantasy perspective is Luke Morahan going out and Marcel Breakey coming in on the wing. And then for the Waratahs, Falau staying at 13, Callaway at 15 as well. And probably the names of Pallotta now on the bench, and Wycliffe Palu on the bench as well. So not much change in this. We're talking about a derby again. What do you make of both of these?
As you said, for the Force, the only real change is Achy Breaky, and I'm not really interested in that, in the song or actually in the player, to be honest. So
no, that's right. I thought Morahan. I actually had him in a starting lineup in a few spots, but I then realised that we're in a derby. They're playing the Waratahs. I think this has one of those attrition ground out games written all over it. Aidan Courtgast asks Benny Taps, Nico Lee, or Derek Carpenter.
I'm quite high on Derek Carpenter.
You are.
Yeah.
Just because of his top knot.
Yeah, you really just the top knot, the man bun. It's just a great addition to any rugby player, and I mean maybe he's just sort of getting into the whole samurai type thing.
Must be killing it in Tokyo with it. Potentially they set the trend with the sumo wrestlers, right? But so you'd rank them Carpenter, Lee, Benny Taps?
Yeah, yep, I would.
Okay. Alex Greenleaf asks Rob Horn, who's back from injury, who we overlooked that, so that's one coming into on the wing for Matt Carraro. So Rob Horn or Pulu?
It's definitely Pulu, and the reason, I mean, I'm outside of, I guess, the usual suspects for the Waratahs, the Falaus, Holloways, Foley. I'm trying to kind of steer clear of some of these other guys until I see them start putting it together. Because they're like a real shambles at the moment, and I just wondered whether there's, a case there whether Daryl Gibson might have, I wouldn't say lost the dressing room, but kind of. I mean, you pointed out last week that he was sort of criticising some of his own players and a little bit of friction in the media. It just all doesn't sound too good. And then you got the Guildford thing, and they just sound like maybe that the wheels have come off a little bit. So until I see some improvements and some signs that they've kind of got their act together, those kind of fringe players, and I include Horn in that, I'm sort of staying clear of them. I mean, when I saw him named in that team this afternoon, and I went through and I looked at my teams and the people I had at outside back, and I was like, actually, I don't fancy him over any of them.
Yeah, that's fair. I know the Green and Gold Rugby guys, their podcast is an interesting listen. They were a little bit worried as well for the Waratahs and how much unity there is there. Building on that question though from Rob Horn and Pulu, Ferris Wheel Junkie asks, so throw Placid and Dane Haylett-Petty in that question for that third outside back spot first for this week.
Okay, I like Placid, the best out of all of them. I think then it's Pulu, then Haylett-Petty, and bringing up the rear is Horn. Yep.
That's the way that I ranked them as well. And so that's for this game week. For the rest of the season, I suspect you're probably going to say something similar because Placid probably has that role a little bit more than Pulu.
Yeah, that's fair.
Look, if we could guarantee that Pulu was starting the Chiefs, he would be top.
Yeah,
he would be the one.
Yeah, I agree.
But you just don't know with Mr. Rennie, who I see was very vocal in an interview that he had with Radio Sport Chaps, saying that he doesn't want to be the next All Black coach, that he wants to go overseas. Now, I don't think he actually said he doesn't want to be the next All Black coach. I think he said at the moment it looks like Shag might go through to the next World Cup, or that's what his wishes were, so I'm going to go overseas. This sounds a little bit like posturing to me. I'm not sure that's exactly what Rennie really thinks. And I think if you look at the way that he uses the press to his advantage and a little bit of subterfuge, I would take that with a grain of salt. Anything more from this match, mate?
No, I think this could be quite a low-scoring affair.
Yep, I concur. Okay, Stormers Reds. There is a change. Rob Simmons coming back at lock, but the change that I wanted to kind of highlight was Duncan Paea-Ua, I think his name is. So the fly half from last season, where we were discussing whether or not we thought, and this was with Quade Cooper's injury, who was going to come in and play 10. It turns out that they tried a few people, but Duncan at the start of the season, Paea-Ua, was going to be that person, and they obviously didn't. Now maybe I didn't see that Sam Green got injured, but he looked a bit limited when he came on. He didn't really add a hell of a lot for Jake McIntyre, so I wonder if they're giving him a chance now to come on and challenge Jake for those last kind of 10 minutes and then challenge him for the starting spot. But that's all I really took out of that. What do you think? We haven't got a Stormers team yet. One point to note for the Stormers is, when's your best guess of when Delende is going to head to the Sevens?
Well, there was some talk, because I read an article saying that it might not be possible now. So it might be that they'll just say, you haven't had enough time to get up to speed, and just pull the pin on that. I think he still wants to, but obviously the Sevens coaches need to sort of look at it. But I don't know. So for me, I think there's some doubt over whether it will actually happen at all.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair to have doubt as well. An article I read was them just saying he's got one more week to make that decision before they sit down in a room and figure out, does he want to go and try and get gold, or does he want to go and play for the Springboks and finish up with the Stormers this season? So I think there's still a question mark there, but you're right that Fleck talked about. They sat down at the start of the season with the coaches, with Paul True. Is it Paul True that does the Sevens Blitzblocker?
Yeah.
And they had to, like the Titch did here with most of the coaches, they had the negotiation around what weeks they would be off. But with Delende's injury, Fleck said that changed the landscape a little bit. And quite what that means, I'm not entirely sure. But just keep a bit of a brief out for that. Had a question from Michael Hall. So he wants to know, Isuzu D-Mac, Pulu and Nabuli. Is Osborne off the bench worth a run over any of those guys?
Well, clearly Isuzu D-Mac does not belong in the company on this list.
No.
But in terms of the others, no, I don't think so.
You'd question Nabuli, right, playing against the Stormers, but that's the only one.
Yeah, that one a little bit, but even then it's...
No, still bird in hand for me.
That's right, yeah.
And if it is just a resting, and it is just trying to reduce Osborne's minutes for the time being, and the Highlanders are up by 30, do you think how much we're going to get Osborne off on the pitch at that time? Don't know. There's all sorts of various scenarios that could play out that could mean Osborne might not get too many minutes, and then you'd be kicking yourself for starting someone who doesn't get many. I think the safe play is to go with Nabuli. All right, Sans, any Stormers team? Anything more from this?
No, not really. I've been playing Delende even off the bench, and I'd still do that because I feel that he's in the last two games he's still been coming on either at halftime or just after halftime. You'd think that either he's going to continue to do that or he's going to start here. He's trending towards a start. Wouldn't surprise me, obviously, if he did start.
Okay, so if you look at other midfielders then that potentially you might be starting, that you could start Delende over, what about your love affair with Derek Carpenter? Would you start Derek Carpenter or Damien Delende?
I think I'm going to stick with Delende.
Okay.
Just think it's one of those things that I kind of look at it and think, what would I kick myself more?
Yeah, that's right.
For doing?
Yep. So Delende, let's assume he starts. You'd take Delende over Carpenter. You'd take Delende over Taminivalu, or would you go that high?
No, I'd go. I'm pretty high on Sefa this week. Actually, I think I'd stick with him.
Okay. Crotty.
I'll start him over Crotty.
And Kurandrani, I assume.
Yes.
Yep. You'd start Ngatai, Karebi, Fekitoe, Venta, all over him.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's move on. Kings Lions. We don't have either team yet, but we do have some injury news. It's not new news. I think most folks who have got their finger on the pulse have seen this news. So Andreas Coetzee is out for a significant amount of time. Marks and Julian Redlinghouse, I believe, are out for 2 weeks, which is quite good news. Certainly for the Lions front row. I think people feared that Marks might be out a little bit longer. So that's fairly good news. And we've got Akker van der Walt starting. Well, he should start at hooker because Robbie Coetzee is out as well. So there's a little bit of a shortage at the Lions for hookers. But speaking of hookers, so that the Kings front row has taken a decent hit as well with the toolbox being out. We haven't heard. Do we have a time frame on him?
No, I didn't actually see anything in particular. They just said that he had a knee injury. Didn't say how. I guess the implication of it was that it wasn't particularly serious. But maybe that's just me reading into it.
No, I know. So you've got zero interest in the Kings front row in this match now?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so do I. I've lost all interest.
I mean, the Warthog versus the Toolbox could have been quite an interesting contest, but sadly we're not going to see that.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. Okay, let's expand on that a little bit then. If you were scratching around for a front row, looking at all the matchups this week, who do you think might be useful? Because I've done this in a couple of leagues. I play front row roulette.
So I guess we're looking for a little owned front row, perhaps.
Yeah, someone outside of Brumbies, Jaguares, Lions, Hurricanes.
So I wondered about the Chiefs this week.
Oh yeah, all right. You have been drinking.
Yeah, I know that's pretty left field, but
that is left field. Run with it. I want to hear the train of thought.
Well, I just don't.
Apart from good dirt.
That's it. I'm out on good dirt. No, I think I just wonder whether they've had the bye, maybe some time to try and sort a few things out, because obviously injuries have been a problem for them, and I don't know. I just think they'll be better. I think their point scoring last time they played it was actually pretty good. So I'm just hoping that they're kind of trending in the right direction.
I had a couple. So I initially had Sunwolves front row in my team for a wee bit, but I had a look at the last few performances and they haven't been very good. Now, they have been away from home, so there is that. But I know that Shotahori is a very good player, so it's not necessarily saying that they're tight and their set piece will be any good. It's just that Shotahori's ball carrying might actually go okay this game, and the Crusaders did okay the week before. So it's a little bit of fudging maths in there to come up with the Sunwolves front row. But another one that I thought, in a similar vein, is the Rebels front row. I thought there's going to be a lot of points in that. The one downside is what you mentioned as well, is that pitch is a nightmare. So front rowers get penalised a lot easier. Okay, anything more from Kings, Lions without a team?
No, you talked about Jaco van der Walt. Where is he listed? I had a feeling he was listed as a fly half, which probably doesn't help people very much.
Yeah, look, he is listed as a fly half, so that position does take a significant knock, the fullback for the Lions. Yeah.
I mean, if that was a like-for-like replacement with Coetzee, I think that would be a great pickup, because it's been, I've liked what I've seen. Obviously, you're hoping for something a little bit more consistent out of the fly-half position.
Yeah, I agree. We'll get onto it a little bit later, but the Lions do have a good run in where even if you're not kicking, that, I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but there may be value in even having him as a fly half. Don't know. It just depends what your situation is. It's a big stretch, though. Okay, Brumbies Crusaders. This is the dreaded 6 o'clock game in New Zealand, so this is going to be, it's actually in Brumbies, but it's the timing is 6 o'clock New Zealand, so it'll be 1 hour before the game week block on Friday, 48 hours before kickoff, that we get the team news. So managers are going to have to be on the ball, but we already know that Johnny McNichol's out this week, which is a bit of a shame. I think it's smart when you look at the Crusaders and the way that the injury that he picked up, and they've got a bye coming up as well. Richie Mwanga looks like he's been getting some kicking practice, as we alluded to. I think Brad Moore picked up the phone to, who did you pick it up to?
Mick the Kick.
That's right, Mick the Kick. Yeah, so whether or not that told him to get his foot a little bit closer to the ball and keep his head down, we'll see. Simon Summers asks, again, no teams at this stage, but Simon Summers asks, Zas, John Martin or Kurandrani? Rank those guys.
I think I'll take them in the order you read them out.
Which is Zas, John Martin and Kurandrani. I might switch the first two around, but yeah, I understand. I was looking around at Kurandrani. He's a player that probably gets away with having a name. You know, it's a sexy name, Kurandrani. Not literally a sexy name, but a name in the international rugby stage where potentially his points at the moment anyway aren't matching the status. So I would be happy to start those two over him.
No, I'd agree. I know that there was a point possibly before in the early days of fantasy rugby draft, where I looked at him and thought this guy's going to be lights out at fantasy just because of the type of player he is, and it just hasn't really translated that way.
No, that's right. Justin Pivus, friend of the podcast, Justin Pivus, asks Jordan Tafua or Liam Gill?
That is a close one.
It is.
I kind of feel the force is with Gill at the moment, so I think I'd ride that out.
That's where I went as well. Yeah, I did too. B. Wilkinson asks, Todd, Dixon, and Gill. Rank them.
I'm going to go Dixon this week. Just got a good feeling about him. And then, obviously, Gill and I think Todd just to finish up. Although Todd's been surprisingly good, actually, but kind of under the radar.
He has, yeah. I think the matchup's a little bit difficult in that one.
Yeah, no, agreed. Especially if we're expecting Pocock back.
No, it doesn't look like it. It looks like this is probably the last of his games, so I assume he played club rugby, or would have played club rugby in the bye. Okay, anything more from this match sans the teams?
Just that, I guess, Jonah Mackay
Sure.
could be in for a shot at the starting berth in the absence of Johnny McNichol. So if you're looking around for an outside back and you want to jump the gun on the team news, I think we can be reasonably confident that he's going to start.
Yeah, I think he will as well. How this match pans out is going to be quite interesting, whether it's a bit of an arm wrestle or whether there's quite a few points in it. But up against Joe Tamani, it's going to be an interesting battle with Jono. One other player that I forgot to mention was Marty McKenzie as well. So he played very, very well for his club team, Christchurch University, over the weekend. They thumped, I can't remember who they're playing. Might have been Belfast they're playing. Sorry if it wasn't Belfast. But he kicked all 10 of his conversions. Now, I don't know if they were all runaways and they were underneath the bin, but yeah, his kicking is pretty exceptional. And he certainly provides a much better balance for me than Ben Volavola on the bench, so just keep an eye out for him as well. Not really for fantasy too much, but just a point to note. Anything more?
No, really looking forward to this game, though. I mean, the Crusaders have got so much momentum behind them, but as we know, it's a difficult place to win over there, so it's going to be, sort of feels like the irresistible force in the immovable object. So, yeah, looking forward to this game.
Yeah, it should be fun. All right, let's move on to, we touched on Monday that we want to go through and have a look at some of the fixtures leading up and into the playoffs, and pull out some teams that have a really, really nice run-in, and also, probably more importantly, have good playoff schedules as well. Mossman, I know you've been having a look at this. Have you got a few teams and a few names you want to throw at us?
Yeah, I guess just looking across the different conferences. So from the New Zealand perspective, for me, the Highlanders look to have possibly the easiest run-in, especially across the playoffs. I think they play the Kings and the Jags in those last few weeks. Those are, well, the Jags anyway, I think, is an away game. But despite that, I think there's a reasonably good matchup, and kind of just think that with the Highlanders that perhaps they've still been winning, but they've kind of haven't really hit their straps. I think they've got room for improvement. I think they can be better. Obviously they'll have Nadolo back as well. So I think there could be, an opportunity maybe to trade for some of those guys. I mean, a week like this where Osborne's out, you might be able to maybe get a sneaky trade in for him, for somebody, not obviously somebody who's not a good player.
Yeah, that's right.
But,
But he's got upside there as well. So the last 4 matches for the Highlanders are, in terms of fantasy rugby, the Kings in the first leg of the semi-final, then the Jags, and then the final is the Chiefs. So that semi-final, that double-legged Kings and Jags, it's pretty tasty.
Yeah.
All right. What about overseas? What about looking at, say, the South African teams? I've looked at a couple of these, and there's some pretty interesting names in there.
There are, yeah. So I guess the ones that stand out for me is that the Lions, for a start, they've got to play the Jags twice, and the Kings and the Blues in their run-in. I think the Lions they've kind of had almost sort of proven themselves already. They've played some of their tougher games and come out on the other side. So, yeah, I think their run-in's pretty good.
So game week 14, 15, 16, 17 for the Lions is Bulls, Jags, Kings, Jags. So your final is your Jags. So that semi-final, the two-legged semi-final of Jags and Kings, and then Jags in the final again.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
That's very tasty. Now, look, while we talk about all of these and their matchups, there is a couple of little asterisks as well. So potentially the Lions may have clinched by that point when they get to the Jags in that final, and there's potentially an option of maybe resting those players going into the Super Rugby playoffs proper. So don't go overboard with stacking it full of Lions and Cumbrinks and these types of fellas. But just a point to know that they should have an uptick should they be playing around that time. And the other one is all of the playoffs are going to be on the other side of the international break. So look, I've got a note here. Just be aware that these guys are going to have a few more kilometres on the clock that guys that wouldn't get pulled away. So perhaps factor that into any of your trades around maybe an international, and maybe look at players that aren't necessarily going to be called up for their squads. But on the flip side of that, they're probably not going to be that as good as the players that are getting called up. So yeah, just a point to know. What else you got in the? And I've got a couple in the South African as well.
So the other one, come playoffs time, is the Bulls. So the Jags and Sunwolves in the semi-final, and then at finals time, the Cheetahs, which is another pretty handy series of fixtures, really.
It is. It really is. So they're 14, 15, 16, 17, a Lions, Jags, Sunwolves, Cheetahs, and you like that run-in, Jags, Sunwolves, Cheetahs. I know we haven't talked about. I had a look at the Sharks. So the Sharks in game week 16 play the Cheetahs, and they play the Sunwolves in the final. There's a lot of unfancied names in the Sharks teams, and it probably are going to let you down getting to the playoffs. But in and around that time, it may be interesting to start looking at the odd Mvovo, Gobert Reinach, Willie LaRue type player, because those two are pretty tasty in the semi-final and final as well. What about from the Australian Conference? Is there any team that stands out there?
Yeah, the one that stood out for me was the Brumbies.
Right.
So their run-in last 4 game weeks: Sunwolves, Reds, Blues, Force.
Right.
Which in terms of the New Zealand and Australian conferences is probably about as good as it gets, really.
True. Yeah, it is. No, that's a good shout. Yeah, I like that. Final against the Force. The Blues should be an interesting. Is that in Eden Park, or is that in?
No, that one is in Auckland. Yep, at Eden Park. But even still,
oh no, absolutely.
Yeah, who knows what kind of shape they could be in. So, and just looking at a team like the Brumbies, so it's going to be difficult to perhaps pry away players like Joe Tamani, obviously, because top player, everyone knows about him. But just I wonder about people like Robbie Coleman. Whether trying to get a sneaky trade in for him, because he's probably someone you could get quite cheaply at this point in the season. You might be able to even do a deal for, say, someone like Matt Fadders. And yet I think that the potential there is that at some point Coleman could end up at fullback. He's got this run of fixtures. That things could really kick in, I think, for Robbie Coleman.
It's interesting, isn't it? You look at you look at the list we've got in front of us, and I also quite like the Stormers running. So so those counting at home, we've seen the Lions, the Bulls, the Stormers, and the Sharks. So the Stormers have got 14, 15, 16, 17. Have got the Cheetahs, Rebels, Force, and Kings in the final, and then they're playing the Sunwolves in Gameweek 12 as well. That's pretty good. Yeah, it actually doesn't get much better than that.
No, you're right. That is pretty good. So
someone like Cheslin Colby would be an interesting one, because I think you're probably not going to get Damien Delende. I think most folks have probably lashed on that pretty quickly. Maybe you want to start looking at Duplessis.
I was just about to say, that's probably not a bad shout. Just, because it would look to other people like you're just trying to get hold of a decent backup fly half, when actually what you're doing is trying to think ahead.
Yeah, that's right.
And that could be as a replacement for somebody who, even for instance, I mean, it might come to it that you might be looking at someone other than Richie Mwanga for those last few games. I mean, I'm just throwing that name out there, but chances are that the Crusaders are probably going to have do have a tougher run of fixtures than that. Yep. And who knows how things will pan out with Richie Mwanga between now and the end of the season anyway.
Yeah, I have a feeling a lot of New Zealand teams are going to beat the crap out of each other in those last few weeks.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Anything more you wanted to bring up from this kind of segment? We'll keep this going. I think we'll review this fairly regularly, because I think it does actually provide a lot of value, especially for those folks who have a decent record and aren't just scratching to get round in the playoffs. The guys that really want to make that push to win their league and to get into that grand final. It does pay to look at some of these fixtures and try and kind of see into your little crystal ball.
Yep. And the other thing is, like you say, looking at these fixtures, and if you are, say, 8-0 or 7-1 and you're feeling pretty confident about getting there, even people like Henry Spate or Warwick Hallant, who are pretty much off everybody's radar at the moment, obviously they're playing in teams that have got good fixtures. You might be able to pick them up and sort of stash them away and sort of hold them for that good run.
No, 100%. It's good. Okay. A little bit of admin. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rug Draft. It's Fantasy REG Draft. Drop us a note on support at fantasyrugbydraft.com. Mossman's on at Nathan Mossman, so fire all the abuse his way. One last thing, Mossman, did you see Chris Gayle had a baby?
No, I'm surprised he must have others, surely.
So it turns out Chris Gayle's had another baby, and he's stolen your firstborn's name. He's called it Blush.
You're joking.
I'm not joking. No, he's called it Blush. Now, I have a feeling we are going to find out that this is as they say in Australia, G-up. I have a feeling this could be something to do with viral marketing. He's somehow signed a deal with Maybelline or something like that. I don't know. But someone said, I saw this on Twitter, apologies, I can't remember whose, he said this might be the greatest troll of all time, calling your kid Blush.
Definitely. It sounds like a wind-up, doesn't it?
It does, mate. All right, on that note, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. He's Nathan Mossman.
Dan, 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 dan.
El Tio Rafino.
What a bust here by Christian Cullen. Plenty of support, and what a dummy!